This house will be your sister's. That was how my father announced it to me, at the very table meant to celebrate the completion of my dream guest house, built with every cent of my savings. He said it as casually as if he were ordering a glass of water at a restaurant, not as a suggestion, not even as a question, but as a unilateral decree. My entire life had been guided by the word prudent. I never wasted money, never chased trends. I worked tirelessly and saved relentlessly, all for one goal: to have my own fortress, a small but sacred place that belonged solely to me, untouched by anyone else. The seed of that dream was planted back in my student years when I lived in a dim, cramped apartment. I would lie awake, holding my breath against the sounds of strangers seeping through the thin walls, staring at the stains on the ceiling. Again and again, I swore to myself, someday, I will create a place of true peace with my own hands. When I joined a construction company, I poured my very first bonus entirely into savings. That was the start of a long and grueling journey. Each time I declined an invitation from friends with the excuse, "Sorry, things are tight this month," my chest ached with guilt. Why work so hard? What are you doing it all for? Life is short. You should be enjoying it. My colleagues asked in bewilderment, and I would always smile and say the same thing: to build my own castle. One of them was a woman who joined the company the same year as I did. She threw herself into both work and love, radiant like the sun. When she announced her marriage and pregnancy, I congratulated her wholeheartedly. Yet deep down, I remember feeling a shapeless anxiety, as if time was flowing differently for me than for everyone else. I had not entirely given up on love. In my late 20s, I met someone I truly considered building a future with. He was gentle, and he respected my passion for work. But weekends, the time he wanted for dates, were for me precious chances to check construction sites or visit showrooms for new building materials. My head was always filled with work. I wanted to keep moving forward. "You're with me, but your eyes are always somewhere far away," he once told me. I knew then it wasn't the right time to be with him. So I chose to end it myself. The sting of hurting him and the loneliness of choosing my dream instead of love still linger inside me like a splinter that never quite disappears. Years passed. In exchange for what I had lost, my dream finally took shape. A white, modern guest house built on sunlit land in the suburbs. It was more than a building. It was my blood, sweat, and tears, my abandoned romance, my solitary youth. It was my very soul made visible. During the design phase, I devoured more than 100 architectural magazines, cut out images for scrapbooks, and debated endlessly with the architect until dawn. Even the seasoned architect, professional and detached at first, eventually yielded to my relentless passion. The house that emerged was my masterpiece, the crystallization of everything I had poured into it. Today was the modest housewarming party to celebrate its completion. Before hosting a larger gathering, I invited my parents, my sister, and her fiancé. The moment they stepped through the front door, they burst into delighted exclamations. "This is incredible! It looks just like a luxury hotel suite. You really have an eye for design. This open ceiling in the living room is amazing." My mother ran her fingers lovingly over the countertop of the custom-made German kitchen system. "How wonderful! Cooking here must feel like a joy every day." Then she turned to me and added, almost as an afterthought, "Do you remember how you once used your part-time wages to help pay for your sister's study abroad? You've always been such a thoughtful, selfless big sister. And now that kindness has bloomed into something this beautiful." Her words felt like a spell, twisting past exploitation into some kind of cherished memory. A coldness seeped into my chest. My father tapped the sturdy beam in the living room, the one I had insisted on, and nodded with satisfaction. "Solid work. No cutting corners here. Yes, this will last." My sister, arm in arm with her fiancé, was already wandering through the rooms. "Look at this walk-in closet. It's bigger than my whole bedroom. Imagine all my clothes in here. What a dream." "Yeah, Then maybe this other room could be my study. Great sunlight. I'd get so much work done. They laughed and planned as if this place already belonged to them. Every innocent remark left a faint stain on my heart. And yet, until that very moment, I had felt nothing but pride. My years of solitude and sacrifice had finally turned into smiles on my family's faces. I truly believed it had all been worth it. We sat together on the sofa, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun streaming through the tall windows, and clinked our champagne glasses. The crisp sound of the bubbles bursting rang in my ears, far too clear. At the very center of my family's smiling faces, my heart alone was silent, eerily still, like the sea before a storm. Something was coming. A battle was about to begin, one that would determine whether I could protect the most important thing in my life. The scene before me was the picture of the ideal family I had cherished in my heart for years. And yet, that fragile piece shattered like glass the moment my father spoke. Now, to the real matter. The cheerful expression he wore just moments ago vanished, replaced with a blank mask. He looked at me with a strangely serious face. My mother and sister also fell silent, their earlier laughter gone as though it had been a lie. The air shifted. The celebration was over. Something else was about to begin. Placing his glass on the table, my father spoke in the same commanding tone he used to announce final decisions at company meetings. This house will be your sister's. What? For a moment, I couldn't process what I had heard. My mind refused to accept the meaning of those words. Use my house? Who will? My sister? This. My house? While I sat stunned, my father continued. As you know, the two of them are about to get married. But with what they earn, they can't afford a proper home. You're still single, and you already live in a fine apartment. You don't really need this house, do you? So this makes sense. It wasn't a suggestion. Not even a confirmation. It was a blunt decree. Then my mother chimed in, her smile saintly yet somehow cold, twisting the knife. That's right. We're family. Helping each other is natural, isn't it? Your dear sister is facing the most important milestone in her life. Isn't it your duty as her older sister to lend a hand? My sister's eyes sparkled with expectation. Her fiancé muttered, almost like an outsider to his own fate. I'm sorry, sister. It's only because we don't have enough means on our own. No one acknowledged the years of effort I had poured in, the love I had sacrificed, or the true meaning this house held for me. No, something was fundamentally wrong. This was my house, my dream, my castle, bought with every cent I had saved. Why should it simply be claimed as theirs, as if by right? Perhaps mistaking my silence for agreement. My father delivered the final blow. This is already decided. Understood? In that instant, something inside me snapped. But the words that left my lips were nothing like what they expected. I understand, Father. I smiled gently, calmly, as I said it. The tension drained from his face at once, replaced by a satisfied grin. My mother and sister exhaled in relief, as though a great burden had lifted. They accepted my answer without the faintest doubt, as if it were the natural conclusion. I knew you'd understand. You've always been such a reasonable daughter. That's my girl. Yes, you're truly a kind child. Your sister will be grateful. They praised me one after another, but their words no longer touched me. My mind was as still and cold as the air after a storm. Because this was not the first time. Beneath the mask of a perfect family, I had long known the truth. My independence and financial stability had been the very foundation propping up their fragile balance. I will never forget. On the day I was accepted into university, I cried with joy. But my parents' reactions had been strangely muted. Congratulations. So, how do you plan to pay the tuition? The words froze me in place. I had assumed my parents would cover it. With your sister's education ahead too, we don't have that kind of money. In the end, I paid everything myself, enrollment fees, tuition, all of it, through scholarships and late-night part-time jobs after lectures, fighting sleep as I worked. All the while, my parents showered my younger sister with the branded clothes she wanted and funded her trips abroad with friends, saying, "These experiences while you're young are priceless." I can still clearly remember the stabbing pain in my chest the day my sister looked at my worn-out sneakers and laughed innocently. "You're still wearing those?" That's so embarrassing. Even after I became an adult, nothing about that pattern changed. When I bought my first slightly expensive watch with my very first bonus, my sister's eyes lit up. "Wow, it's beautiful. Let me borrow it," she said, taking it away. A few days later, she returned it covered in scratches. When I was heartbroken, my mother simply said, "I'm sorry, but she's still a child. You need to be an adult and forgive her." The money I worked so hard to earn somehow turned into family property. It vanished into a down payment for my sister's car, into part of my parents' home renovation costs, and countless other things. Because we're family. That phrase was always directed only at me, a convenient spell to make me sacrifice. So this time, I knew saying no outright would be meaningless. They would cry, scream, and then spread to every relative that I was selfish, heartless, and ungrateful. If that happened, the whole issue would sink into an emotional swamp and drift further from any real solution. What they needed was not emotion. They needed cold, undeniable facts. And for me, this guest house was not just a house. It was my asset, my proof that I could hold the reins of my own life in my own hands. To use this property by my choice in the most effective way possible. That would be my declaration of independence, not only to them, but to the version of myself who had been exploited for so long. After the housewarming, I kept up the perfect appearance of cooperation. "When's the move-in date? Is there anything I can do to help?" With my practiced smile, I asked these questions, and not a single one of them doubted me. My sister, beaming, said, "We're thinking about the second Saturday of next month." I quietly wrote that date into my planner. 3 weeks until the day of fate. My quiet, final war had begun. The next day, I started moving in secret. I filed for vacation leave from work and reached out to an old acquaintance, my lawyer. "Sir, what I'm about to defend is not just a house. It's about my own life, which has been exploited for years. I've long been ready to fight for it." Hearing my quiet yet unshakable resolve, the lawyer understood everything and calmly presented the best course of action. Following his advice, I researched companies that specialized in corporate property rentals, compiling a list of more than a dozen. I contacted each one and held meeting after meeting with their representatives. It became clear very quickly that my guest house, with its excellent access to the city and its modern design, was in high demand. It could serve as a corporate training facility or a reception house for overseas clients. The proposed contracts far exceeded my expectations. After negotiations, I chose the most trustworthy company with the best terms and signed an agreement. The contract was for a 5-year lease. The rent was more than enough to cover my mortgage payments and still leave me with significant profit. With my lawyer, I reviewed the contract again and added a special clause. If the landlord cancels the contract for personal reasons, they must pay double the remaining rent as a penalty. This way, my lawyer explained, they can never pressure you to reverse it out of emotion. And more importantly, it locks in your own resolve. There's no turning back now. I signed the thick contract and had it sealed at the notary office. When I handed over a copy of the new guesthouse keys to the representative, who wore a professional smile, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. The fury, the hatred, the burning emotions were gone. All that remained was a quiet, steel-like resolve to do what needed to be done lawfully and correctly. Meanwhile, my sister kept sending me messages. "Which curtain color do you think, blue or green? Could you buy us a bigger refrigerator? Thank you." To each one, I replied simply, "Sure, whatever you like." And then came the fated day. The second Saturday of the month. Under a flawless, cloudless sky, a large moving truck pulled up in front of the guest house. Laughter spilled from the back as my sister, dressed in a pure white dress, stepped down with her slightly nervous fiancé. Behind them appeared my parents, smiling broadly as if this were their own triumph. "Sis, thanks for letting us move in today." My sister waved like a queen returning to her palace. From a cafe terrace across the street, I sat quietly behind my sunglasses, watching. The movers threw open the back of the truck with cheerful shouts and lifted the first box. And that was the moment it happened. A sleek black sedan glided silently to a stop in front of the guest house. From the back seat emerged a man in a crisp suit, the representative from the property management company. He stepped forward, politely stopping the movers, and addressed my stunned sister and her fiancé with a warm but unmistakably firm tone. "Excuse me. This property is under a corporate lease agreement with our company as of today. Entry by private individuals is not permitted. May I ask what business you have here?" His overly polite words froze them all, my sister, her fiancé, and my parents, like statues. The first to snap out of it was my short-tempered father. "What? What are you talking about? This is our daughter's house. Our other daughter and her husband are moving in today." The representative did not flinch. With a faintly sympathetic look, but a professional tone, he continued. "It seems there's some misunderstanding, but we have legally binding documents here." From his briefcase, he drew out a copy of the thick contract I had signed and spread it open in front of my father. "This is the commercial lease agreement signed between our company and your elder daughter, the legal owner of this property. It bears the official notary seal. As of yesterday, management rights for this property have been fully transferred to us." At the word contract, my parents' faces turned pale. My sister's eyes welled up. "What do you mean?" "Sister? This is a mistake, right?" she whispered, scanning the area in desperation. My father snatched the contract and devoured every line with his eyes. A moment later, his hands shook with rage. He understood completely. His gaze, filled with hatred, locked onto me across the street. But before I could reveal myself, a sharp sound rang out through the quiet residential neighborhood. I pressed the call button on my smartphone. The number was 911. 911. "What's your emergency?" "I'd like to report trespassing. Several individuals are attempting to occupy a property I legally own under corporate contract and are refusing to leave." "Yes, the address is." Minutes later, sirens pierced the air as 2 police cars arrived. Slowly, I rose from my cafe seat. It was time to end this long war. The moment the officers stepped out of their cars, my father's furious face froze. My mother turned ashen, forcing a brittle smile as she tried to explain. Wait. Please, it's just for the neighbor's sake. This is only a little family misunderstanding. Nothing serious." But when the officers reviewed the contract, legally binding, notarized, airtight, and heard the calm, professional explanation from the company representative, their tone shifted. "You ungrateful child. You dare treat your own parents like criminals?" My father erupted, pointing at me and screaming so loudly his voice echoed across the street. "We were only trying to help your poor sister. This happened because you're stubborn, unreasonable, and heartless." He painted himself as a victim, a man whose kindness had been cruelly trampled. The officers ignored the outburst. They calmly confirmed the facts and delivered their verdict. A valid commercial contract, notarized and enforceable, and a family attempting to move in with no legal right. The truth was plain. "We understand your feelings, but legally, this company's rights take precedence. Continuing this behavior constitutes trespassing and interference with lawful business. You must leave immediately." At the officer's calm yet merciless announcement, they were finally struck silent. My sister and her fiancé stood motionless in front of the truck, as if their souls had left their bodies. The movers averted their eyes awkwardly. I never looked any of them in the eye. I only felt deep, profound gratitude toward the company representative who had carried everything out perfectly on my behalf. and the police officers who had handled the situation with such calm professionalism. That day marked the end of my so-called family and the beginning of my real life. After that incident, all contact with my parents and sister ceased completely. Some relatives called to scold me. How could you be so unfilial? But when I calmly explained the facts, they faltered and hung up. The guest house was leased to the corporation as planned, and steady revenue flowed into my account each month. My life became more stable than ever, and my heart felt astonishingly calm. At last, I was free from the heavy, suffocating chains I had carried for so long. With both financial and emotional freedom, I began allowing myself the things I had once forbidden. I traveled through European museums I had always dreamed of visiting. I returned to the language studies I had abandoned in college. I even joined a weekend cooking class. I had never realized how profoundly nourishing it was to spend time and money solely on myself. The winds of fate began to shift about 3 years later. My mother's sister called me out of the blue. Your father and mother are in serious trouble. She explained that they had invested their retirement savings in an overseas scheme, hoping to grow their funds. It had been a classic scam, and they had lost nearly everything. The police told them it was impossible to pursue since the company was abroad. They were at a complete loss. The old me would have rushed to their side. I would have thought, I have to fix this, and emptied my savings to rescue them. But I was not that person anymore. All I said to my aunt was, "Thank you for letting me know." And I ended the call. For a moment, I thought. Inside me, two voices clashed. One cold, saying, "They brought this on themselves." The other gentle, whispering, "But still, they're your parents." And so, I made a decision. Instead of sending money, I reached out to a college friend, a lawyer with expertise in international financial crimes. I explained the situation. He prepared a detailed report outlining the fraud, the possible legal avenues, and a list of specialized agencies they should contact. I mailed that report to my parents anonymously, without even signing my name. That was the greatest act of sincerity I could offer. Months later, my lawyer handed me a letter from my father. I opened it cautiously. Inside were several pages of handwriting, a long message. He wrote that thanks to the report I had sent, they had found the right specialists after all. It took time, but they managed to recover part of the stolen funds. And then came words I had never once heard from him before. If not for your help, we would have lost everything and been left on the streets. You were always the one who was right, the smart one. It's only now, after nearly losing everything at this age, that I finally see how foolish, selfish, and dependent on you we have been. I am truly sorry. And thank you. The last lines were smudged, warped by tears. It was the first genuine apology I had ever received from my father. Clutching that letter, I sobbed out loud. I could feel something deep inside me, long frozen, finally beginning to thaw. That letter became the fragile thread that reconnected us, just barely, but enough to form a path again. 2 years later, I met my life partner and married him. He knew everything about my past, and he embraced me gently. You did nothing wrong. You only fought to protect your life and your dignity. I deeply respect your strength and integrity. Building a home with someone I trusted completely, being loved and supported every day, calmed my heart and made me stronger than ever. With his encouragement, I set one rule with my parents and sister. Once a year, on my birthday, we'll have a family dinner together. Outside of that, there will be no personal requests for money or favors. They quietly agreed. The first dinner was painfully awkward. In a private room at a restaurant, nobody knew what to say. The only sound was the clinking of cutlery. My husband tried desperately to fill the silence with small talk about the weather. My father kept his head down. My mother wore a stiff, artificial smile. My sister couldn't meet my eyes. Still, none of them walked out. And that alone was our first step toward healing. With each passing year, a little more conversation returned. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. It was a cautious, managed relationship, fragile, but real. And then, just recently, a turning point arrived. My sister sent me a message with an ultrasound photo attached. After parting ways with her former fiancé, she had remarried a few years ago. Now, a new life was growing inside her. Sis, will you meet this child as an aunt? Her message was filled with plain, sincere words about the hardship she had endured, the growth she had found through working multiple jobs to support her family, and her deep regret for the past. When I finally rented a tiny apartment with money I earned through my own sweat, I realized, maybe for the first time, the pain I had caused you, nearly taking away something that meant everything. I'm so sorry. In the photo, a tiny heart was beating, an innocent life I already cherished. This child had nothing to do with the ugly conflicts our generation had carried on. And at that very time, I had just learned that a new life was growing inside me as well. I was going to be a mother. I must never let our children inherit the hatred of the past. With trembling fingers, I dialed her number. When she answered, I fought back tears and said, "Congratulations." Then, I added, "Yes, of course. Your child and the child soon to be born to me will be cousins. From now on, let's truly become a family in a new sense." It was like the first warm light of spring after a long, long winter. I had lost much. I had been deeply wounded. But I had reclaimed control of my life with my own hands. And now I was beginning to build a new kind of family, also with my own hands. My castle was no longer mine alone. It would stand as a lighthouse, shining softly over the children soon to be born, and over a family determined to rise again from the wreckage of its past.